Have won the NBA's Most Valuable Player award. And entering this year, the field is arguably as crowded as it's ever been. The reigning and the favorite. Does Giannis have an advantage because he doesn't have another MVP candidate on his team? Beard been talking. Last season, Harden became the first player in league history to average 35 points and 7 assists in a single season. And then this summer, he and his team tried to convince the world that the voters got it wrong. First-time winner? Is the grass greener, or should AD be careful what he wished for? The Brow has never finished better than third in MVP voting, so how will the spotlight and having LeBron as his teammate impact his candidacy? Managing the load. Coming off his second finals MVP, how many games will Kawhi play during his first season in LA? But what about Curry, Jokic, and, LeBron? It's an hour-long MVP conversation. NBA TV's forecast MVP starts at least one MVP. No trophies yet for the likes of Kawhi, Embiid, Lillard, AD, and Jokic. LeBron has won 4, but none since 2013. Here to discuss who has an inside track and what the profile of this season's MVP will look like is the NBA champ Steve Smith, Sekou Smith. I'm Jared Greenberg. This is as unpredictable and as crowded as a field as we've ever seen. Can you recall a year or even a stretch of years where this many guys, Smitty, have a legit chance to walk away with the trophy?
We've had some years. I think for me personally, this is one of those years I haven't said clear-cut, this is my guy, the MVP. I put some thought into it and say, and had this guy saying this guy maybe. But this is the first time for me in a long time I just didn't jump out as a favorite for me.
Yeah, I think this is the first year we looked at it and had this large a field. We've had some competitive races in recent years. We've had maybe 3 or 4 guys who were legitimate candidates at this time of a season, but 7, 8, maybe 9 different guys who are legit in that conversation. This is the first in a real long time.
And then Jared, Sekou, I don't know if all of us, we have seen this many MVP-type guys go to different teams where we're saying we don't have a history of a Paul George in the Clippers, a history of a Kawhi Leonard in the Clippers. So I think that's also adds to it.
I would make the argument that you could say 10 to 12 different individuals will be considered at some point this season for a variety of different reasons to win MVP. Let's go to topic number 2 on an hour-long special here. Long gone are the days of the super team, as you were referencing. The 2019-2020 season is being billed as the year of the dynamic duo. So how will all of these all-stars teaming up either help each other or, in some cases, Sekou, hurt each other's candidacy?
Well, I mean, it's interesting. You got certain guys who are definitely going to be having a tug-of-war, basically, for usage. I mean, we got the 2 guys with the highest usage rate in recent seasons that we've ever seen in the league, in James Harden and Russell Westbrook playing together. They naturally are going to have to, one's going to have to take a little bit of a step back. But then you have other guys. We've never seen Anthony Davis in a position to play with another true superstar. So now maybe that gives him a bump and potentially takes away from his candidacy with LeBron on his roster.
But Sekou, let's get inside the mind of the voter, which you have been for a long time. The psychology of it goes into who will win just as much as how you perform on the court. We deal with everything from voter fatigue, which many people credit as the reason why LeBron hasn't won in many years, and you also look at how you impact winning. So the voter, you have to think about what they're going into this with.
Well, they're looking at it, who's on the ticket. You know, every player has somebody else that's going to directly impact his candidacy on his roster. You mentioned Giannis earlier, a guy who doesn't have another superstar to be considered one of these dynamic duos.
Yeah.
But in the mind of most voters, and I've been doing this, as you mentioned, for a very long time, Jerry, the narrative gets weaved early in the season, Smitty. You start making up your mind about which guy is putting forth the kind of numbers, and his team is playing off of that to put him in this MVP conversation. So a lot of it's going to depend on the individual guys, like which one of those 2 guys is playing out of his mind early in the year, because that kind of sets the tone for anybody's candidacy.
And I also look at with Sekou, because sometimes we get caught up who's the better player versus who's the MVP that season. Sometimes you look and say, I think this guy's a better player, But this guy is the most valuable player this season in the league, and it comes down to winning for a lot of voters.
Well, let's look at a couple of specific examples. Let's look at Kawhi and Paul George. Do you think that they split votes and cancel each other out?
You know, I don't. I think a great example, Russell Westbrook had a phenomenal year last year, but Paul George, the way he was playing, in my opinion, I still felt he was playing at an MVP level. And I think not that Russell Westbrook was hurting him or helping him. I just looked at Paul George individually, and he finished third, along with a guy whose usage rate was huge. And I still thought a guy like Paul George still had a chance to win it and could have been maybe further up if he hadn't got hurt.
To what Jared's speaking of, though, and I think the most obvious example we've had of that recently is Steph Curry and Kevin Durant in Golden State. They literally canceled each other out in training camp. Nobody was looking at either guy as maybe a favorite for MVP because he was playing with the other one. And to me, I'm afraid that's where Paul George and Kawhi might fit in a lot of people's minds, because here's the finals MVP, the reigning finals MVP, playing with a guy who finished top 3 last year. How would they separate themselves in that mix when they're playing together? It's going to be tough for a lot of voters to figure that out.
Let's go to topic number 3, and I know this is something, Smitty, that you're intrigued by. With Kevin Durant essentially being ruled out for the year by the general manager of the Nets, Sean Marks, before we even got to training camp, with arguably the most talented or the best player in the world not setting foot on the court this year, how does that change the race this season?
Yeah, because he's healthy. He automatically comes to my mind. Kevin Durant is a guy, other than when he was with the Warriors, he's the best player in the league. I'd still, like Sekou said, I didn't think he would win MVP because of those two would cancel each other out. Back to Paul George and Russell Westbrook, I thought Paul could just because we didn't have that expectation of Paul George. Without Kevin Durant, it opens up this field. It opens up some guys who've never won it before. And he's been around a long time. For me, it's Anthony Davis is one of those guys that always had MVP-type talent for me. Can he stay healthy? Can he win games? And I think he can do that this year with the Lakers.
Something we know, Sekou, is that there's a distinction between being the best player in the game, which is certainly arguable every season, and being the most valuable player in the game. And now that Kawhi Leonard has won a Finals MVP and really carried the Raptors to a championship, how does that factor into the MVP race?
Well, I think it's huge in terms of what type of narrative you're going to start off the season with. Think about when Kevin Durant left Oklahoma City, a lot of us made up our minds going in that Russell Westbrook had a great opportunity to win his first MVP because of the circumstance. Well, Kawhi has built a case based off his circumstance last season with Toronto that you're going to look at him now, and not just as a guy who turns it up, low manages all season and turns it up and plays great in the finals, but now he's the lead player on a team that's considered a championship contender at the start of a season. Does that give him kind of a nose ahead of the crowd in the race for MVP?
Did you look at the rundown of the show? Because that's exactly where
I might have listened in there.
You might have listened to the meeting here. So an NBA team just load managed its way to a title. In our copy and paste league that we live in, did the Raptors provide the model, not just for the Clippers with Kawhi, but for the entire league, Smitty, on how you build a championship team with a star by restricting his minutes and how many games he plays and does not play?
They did, because to me, I've been watching this league since, 1979 because of Magic Johnson. And I've looked at every time a team won the championship since then, it became a copycat league. And that's why I look at it. When the Pistons was winning with defense, we all wanted to defend. When Magic won, we all need a big point guard. I think right now they got a chance to win with load management. I think everybody will take that to another level and say, hey, the regular season means a lot, but the championship and playoffs means more.
Yeah, and I think we also have to understand that, look at the guys we're talking about. How many of these guys in the MVP conversation are 25 or younger? Giannis, AD, a little bit over that mark. Embiid. And then look at the other guys who are all at or in their 30s.
Right.
They don't have a choice. They almost have to consider some sort of maintenance program so they can keep playing at the high level that they are. So it makes it pertinent for them to be able to do this.
Let me quickly just put you on the spot. Give me a number. How many games does a player have to play in order to be in your MVP ladder?
Well, I think the thing I always look at is, at the end of a year, have you played at least 62 games?
62. So you can miss 20 games.
I just think that's a reasonable number. Anything more than that is kind of hard.
Smitty?
Yeah, I go 62 to 70, but then also you got to add.
That's a long range, though, right?
Because sometimes you look at it. I don't mind you missing this game at the end of the year when you've already locked up the number 1 seed. So that's the reason why I have that range, Jerry. Because
no question, but oftentimes with a voter, games missed can be the tiebreaker.
It could be.
And
right?
it's when they happen, Jerry.
Well, yes.
If you miss 10, 15 games early, you're going to be out of the race anyway. Well, it'll be hard for you to catch up.
Let's talk about Kawhi. What's your expectation with the Clippers? Meanwhile, last year, remember, he wasn't just load managing. He was coming off the year where he only played 9 games with the Spurs. So what do you expect for him this year?